Hello everyone, Prime here, and I hope you've had a great day. Today we're going to be talking about Chronos, some facts about him, lore, and all of that good stuff, as well as asking ourselves the question, what would a universe without time look like? Chronos himself, spelled Chronos or Chronus, appears as an elderly gentleman, sometimes with a great long protruding beard, white hair. So everything you'd expect an old man to have. He's pretty much got that aesthetic going for him. But in mosaic art, he appears as a younger man. So his depictions change, which of course makes sense. He's the personification of time, so him being able to change his appearance at will makes a lot of sense. As a primordial god, he was among the first immortals to be born, the protagonoi. Primordial gods were typically purely elemental beings. For instance, you have gods like Pontus, who was the primordial god of the sea, and he literally is the sea, for instance. So the primordial goddess of the sea, Thalassa, might be described having sort of human features, but ultimately she still is a personification of the sea, and because of that she'll always retain sort of those elements and aesthetics. So it was Chronos' job to oversee time. He emerged self-formed at the dawn of creation as a grown man. He was incorporeal, had a serpentine form, and also had 3 heads, one of a man, one of a bull, and one of a lion. His wife was also the goddess of destiny, and they seemed to operate independent of each other, but of course came together as husband and wife, all of that. That said, what is destiny without time? And how does time have purpose without destiny? To use a briefly thought out analogy, if a person spends their time training to become a shipwright, let's say, they've trained all of their life for this, and eventually they achieve their destiny of becoming a shipwright, well then, it's because they've had all of that time to train and prepare themselves for that role. But let's say that same person, whilst they were growing up, had other commitments that prevented them from putting time into the necessary training that was required to become that shipwright. Well, they wouldn't necessarily meet their destiny. The destiny of becoming a shipwright might still be there, but, well, another destiny would have taken the priority. The destiny would still exist, but the destiny that had the most meaning to them, well, just wouldn't come into fruition. So, time gives destiny its meaning, and of course, destiny gives time its meaning as well. That's the best way I could sort of describe their relationship, I suppose. It's a pretty strong relationship, and their marriage must have been a pretty good one. At least you're not going to find yourself having a lot of stories that you might have found with Zeus and Hera, for instance. So there's that. In Orphaic tradition, they coil themselves around the world egg and split it open to create an ordered universe containing the earth, the sky, and the sea. They then circle themselves around the cosmos and drive the rotation of the heavens, as well as the passage of time. Also, Chronos can find himself holding a wheel containing the zodiac signs on it. Now, all of this begs the question, what would happen if for some reason Chronos disappeared? Perhaps Kali is far more powerful than I've really been considering, and she somehow finds a way to destroy Chronos. Because I'm considering Chronos to be essentially untouchable. Of course, in Smite's a game, you have to have a way to kill all of the playable characters that you include, otherwise, probably not going to have the most fun experience. But Chronos' personification of time itself most likely could easily make himself not only intangible, but literally out of mind, essentially. A bit like Toby from Naruto, but on steroids, or some other performance-boosting drug. Point is, Chronos is pretty OP. Now, of course, there are some myths in which he's created with all the other primordial deities, and he's not necessarily the creator or responsible for the creation of the others, but even still, his OP-ness doesn't exactly go away. It's enhanced, sure, by the Orphaic tradition, but he's still a pretty powerful, considerable, formidable god. But if time were to disappear, i.e. it would necessarily stop, because before Chronos started doing his rounds in the myth that I told you, time wasn't exactly passing. Chronos is responsible for the eternal passage of time. So with him out of the picture, I think there are a few possibilities. Now, within the universe of Smite, if this were to happen, then we have Janus and Thoth, who were credited for being sort of, as well as other things that they resided over, deities of time. And unlike a lot of other deities in Smite, I don't think that they would necessarily be willing to duel each other or whatever for Kronos' worshippers or his former status or power. So if there was anything to gain from Kronos' death or disappearance or whatever you want to consider it, I think that they'd come to some sort of arrangement. But of course, Smite is the battlegrounds of the gods, and the gods are sort of forced to fight each other, so there's that possibility as well. You know, it's a lot like the relationship a country would have with its political leader. The political leader might not necessarily be a necessity, but it's there right now, controlling and manipulating all of the strings and such, or, at least it has a good deal of control over a good number of all the strings, and it likes that control, but it's certainly not necessary by any means, and the country won't die just because they leave. But then we have the other deities that would be able to operate whilst Kronos is not doing his function. So I think a lot of the Greek gods would probably be out of commission. Of course, any of the primordial gods who would have been around at the same time as Kronos, i.e. Eros, for example, the personification of love, he'd probably be fine. Kronos' wife, she was the personification of destiny, so she'd be fine. Erebus, being the personification of darkness and wife of Nox, she'd be fine. Nox and gods like Nox, Uranus, Gaia being Terra, gods like that operate within time. I'm not sure if they would necessarily be unaffected by Kronos' disappearance. I'm guessing that they would just freeze in time along with the inhabitants of the earth and, of course, a lot of the gods that reign over the earth. Poseidon, for instance, would probably be frozen in time. Zeus, Hercules, Ares, Athena, so on and so forth. A lot of the Greek gods would probably be frozen in time. Hercules is Roman, but you get the point. Which means a lot of the cast of Smite would also most likely be frozen in time. There are some gods who I'm considering perhaps would be able to necessarily not be affected by time. Nemesis, I'm not sure about. And I'm also not sure about the Morrigan. I'm not too sure whether Nemesis herself is justice, if she's just a personification of justice, if she has a weird in-between between the two, and the same sort of deal with the Morrigan. But, for example, Thanatos is depicted as a fairly young individual, seemingly unaffected by time. If that wasn't enough, when he was removed from the world, as I described in the previous video that I discussed Thanatos, death simply did not occur in the world. So he's probably got a similar deal of where if he somehow dies, death probably would no longer exist. Which probably means that perhaps he could operate outside of the powers of time. If that's the case, then somehow you could have no control of your body, no control over thoughts or any processes that, occur within you, but still die. Does that mean that you could age? Probably not, because time doesn't exist. But then, if Giras, the Greek god of aging, or rather specifically old age itself, if he could somehow function, his powers could somehow function, that means you could probably age, which probably means you could still die. Though aging is probably one of those things that's strongly linked with time itself. With time being frozen, old age would most likely be frozen, or rather the aging process would most likely be frozen. Ergo, you probably wouldn't be able to die of old age. Then again, Kronos' wife is the goddess of necessity, and depending on your interpretation of that, remember that I said that Kronos could operate independent of his wife, i.e. necessity, destiny, can work independent of time. People require food and sustenance as a necessity, which could mean that you could potentially die of starvation, or if it's impossible for you to die because something would have happened to Thanatos, well, then you probably might die, assuming that Thanatos is frozen in time, for instance, let's say. If he's not, and he's still very much functional, then he still exists to guide your soul down to the underworld, the Greek underworld, which means more souls for Hades, assuming that Hades has control over himself. But if death is completely unaffected by this, that means other deities in Smite that are deities of death could perhaps take these Greek souls, or your soul for instance, and claim them as another deity of the underworld. Might, for example, Hell, for instance, if she's unaffected by age, or rather, if she's unaffected by time, well, enjoy Helheim, I suppose? I actually think Helheim is really not so bad of a place to chill out. In fact, for us personally, in our day and age, Helheim is probably one of the, not exactly best case scenario to end up if you die, but a pretty decent deal, if you ask me, in comparison to a lot of the other horrors that you might face. But, stepping away from that possibly gloomy subject that I didn't actually realize was gloomy at the time of making the video, but whatever. Perhaps that could be the setup for a pretty nice plot within Smite. Something happens to Chronos. Time freezes within the world of Smite. Most of the god are put out of commission, and it's up to the gods of death and the few other gods that aren't affected by this new change in time to restore things, to restore the balance that once was. Who's behind this mysterious freezing of time? Can Chronos be saved? That doesn't sound like a bad Smite plot at all. But hey, Smite's not exactly an RPG, so I can only dream. But here you go. That's pretty much the video on Chronos. Now, Chronos actually got a lot of votes last time by a fairly decent mile. Over half of the people that voted for Chronos. So I decided, hey, why don't I pull something a little bit different out of the bag? Something more similar to the Sun Wukong video. Instead of making a usual video about Sun Wukong where I follow my usual structure, I decided to turn that into a bit more of a discussion specific to Sun Wukong. So I tried this out with Chronos. If you prefer these sorts of videos where instead of just detailing every little thing I find out about the god specifically, but more taking some of the things I find out about them and then going with a bit of my own angle on the video, let me know if you enjoy those videos more, because I think I prefer to take this series rather, in that direction than the direction of doing the whole same old appearance, purpose, relationship, stories, facts, which is essentially my structure for each one of these videos in this series. Following that structure is what I've been doing up until this point for most of the gods. Bar a few. I'd like to change it up and do something else. So if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like, and of course tell me what you think about everything that exists. Do you think I'm completely wrong? Again, these are mostly just my opinions based off of my understanding of the gods and things that I've found, so let me know what you think in the comments section below. And also, if you want me to make a part 2 to this video in which I give you what you actually expected and asked for, the whole appearance, purpose, relationship, story, cookie cutter, standard structure video that I usually make for a video in this series, go ahead and leave a request in the comment section below. I'm probably not going to put this video in the God Lore playlist, I'm probably going to put it in the expanded playlist, but there you go. If you enjoyed, go ahead, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, enjoy what I've done here, enjoy what I usually do here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You're very much welcome here, and until the next video, have a very, very good day. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, I trust that you don't mind that I didn't upload yesterday and instead uploaded today. I just wanted a bit more time just to think over some of the things that I, discuss in this video. Make sure I don't say something that's completely too silly. But yeah. But yes, until the next video, have a very good day. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.